Everyone's doing the same thing. Chasing the same goals, building the same kind of life, consuming the same content, following the same influencers, parroting the same opinions, moving in the same direction at the same speed toward the same finish line that no one's even sure exists. And then there's you. You think differently, you ask questions no one else is asking, you see patterns they miss, you refuse to get excited about things that don't actually matter, and because of that you've probably been called weird, overthinking, difficult, out of touch. But here's what Carl Jung understood, and what most people are just starting to realize in 2026. The people who think differently aren't behind, they're ahead. Because while everyone else has been optimizing for the same game, that game is collapsing. The rules that worked for the last decade, hustle harder, go viral, personal brand, constant visibility, fake it till you make it, they're not working anymore. The algorithms changed, the economy shifted, the culture moved, and suddenly all those people who were winning by following the template, they're lost. But you're not, because you were never playing that game in the first place. Jung believed that the people who individuate, who refuse to conform, who think for themselves, who build from their own values instead of copying others, those people don't just survive cultural shifts, they lead them. 2026 doesn't belong to the loudest voices, it doesn't belong to the most visible, it belongs to the ones who refused to follow, the ones who stayed quiet while everyone else performed, the ones who built something real while everyone else built for the algorithm. This video is about why this year, this specific moment in time, belongs to people like you, and what Jung would say you need to do now. Let's start with what's happening right now, because if you've been paying attention, you've probably noticed something. The old playbook isn't working anymore. For the last 10 years, the internet rewarded a very specific type of person. The personal brand, the hustler, the rise and grind entrepreneur, the viral creator, the person who could yell the loudest, post the most, optimize every second of their life for content. And it worked for a while. People built entire careers on visibility, on volume, on playing the algorithm. But something shifted in the last year or two, and if you're someone who thinks differently, you felt it before most people even noticed. The burnout epidemic hit the influencers. The gurus started admitting they were exhausted. The authentic personal brands got exposed as performances. The algorithms that rewarded constant posting started punishing it. Audiences got tired of being sold to. They got tired of the same recycled advice. They got tired of noise. And suddenly, the people who were winning by following the template, they don't know what to do because the template broke, and they never learned how to think for themselves. Jung would say this was inevitable. He wrote about it in the 1930s, long before the internet, long before influencer culture. He called it collective possession, the state where so many people identify with the same values, the same goals, the same way of being, that they lose touch with their individual selves. And when the collective shifts, when the culture changes, when the economy crashes, when the algorithms update, those people have nothing to fall back on, because they never built anything real. They just built what was popular. But you didn't do that, you couldn't even if you wanted to, because something inside you refused to follow, refused to perform, refused to optimize your life for someone else's metrics. And for years that probably felt like a disadvantage, like you were missing out, like you were behind, but you weren't behind, you were just early. Because the culture is finally catching up to what you already knew, thinking for yourself isn't a liability, it's the only thing that lasts. Let's be specific about what thinking differently actually means, because it's not about being contrarian for the sake of it. It's not about rejecting everything mainstream just to feel special. Jung wasn't interested in rebellion as performance. He was interested in individuation, the process of becoming who you actually are instead of who the culture tells you to be. In 2026, thinking differently looks like this. You don't chase trends, you build depth. While everyone else is jumping on the latest viral format, the latest productivity hack, the latest aesthetic, you're focused on mastery, on craft, on building something that doesn't need the algorithm's approval to exist. You don't optimize for attention, you optimize for meaning. You're not trying to go viral, you're not trying to be seen by everyone. You're trying to create work that matters to you and to the small group of people who actually care, and that's enough. You don't copy what works for others, you figure out what works for you. You're not following someone else's blueprint. You're not modeling someone else's success. You're experimenting. You're making mistakes. You're building something that looks like nothing else because it came from you. You don't perform confidence. You sit with uncertainty. While everyone else is acting like they have it all figured out, you're asking questions. You're admitting doubt. You're comfortable not knowing. And that makes you dangerous, because the people who can sit with uncertainty are the ones who can navigate complexity. You don't need external validation to know you're on the right path. You're not checking the metrics every day. You're not waiting for permission. You're not looking for proof that you're good enough. You just keep going because the work itself is the reward. Jung believed that this kind of person, the individuated person, was rare, not because most people can't think differently, but because most people are terrified of what happens when they do. Because when you stop following the crowd, you lose the crowd's protection. You lose the safety of being anonymous in the herd. You lose the comfort of knowing you're doing what everyone else is doing. But you gain something more valuable. You gain yourself. And in 2026, that's the only currency that matters. Here's what's happening right now that most people won't admit out loud. The crowd is panicking. The economy is unstable. The job market is shifting. AI is disrupting entire industries. The algorithms are unpredictable. The rules that used to guarantee success, go to college, get a good job, build a personal brand, post consistently, they're not guarantees anymore. And the people who built their entire identity around those rules, they're terrified. They don't know what to do when the template stops working. They don't know how to think strategically. They don't know how to adapt because they never learned how. They just learned to follow. But you're not panicking, and that's not because you're more confident or more talented. It's because you've been training for this your whole life. You've been thinking for yourself when everyone else was copying. You've been questioning when everyone else was conforming. You've been building depth when everyone else was chasing visibility. And now, when the ground is shifting, you're not lost, because you were never standing on someone else's foundation in the first place. Jung talked about this in his concept of the opposites. He believed that cultural shifts happen in cycles. When the collective swings too far in one direction, toward conformity, toward performance, toward external validation, it eventually swings back, toward individuality, toward authenticity, toward depth. And we're in that swing right now. The culture is moving away from volume and toward substance, away from performance and toward presence, away from following and toward leading. And the people who are already comfortable with that, who were doing it even when it wasn't popular, they're the ones who are going to define the next era. That's you, not because you're special, because you refused to follow when everyone else did, and now the culture needs what you've been building. But let's be honest about something, because I don't want to romanticize this. Thinking differently is lonely, especially before the culture catches up. For years, maybe for your whole life, you've been out of sync. You didn't get excited about the things other people got excited about. You didn't want what they wanted. You didn't fit into the boxes they tried to put you in. And that hurt, maybe it still does. You've watched people around you succeed by following the template. You've watched them get promoted, go viral, build audiences, get validation. And you've wondered if you were wrong, if you were just being stubborn, if you should have just played the game like everyone else. Jung would say that doubt is part of the process, because individuation isn't comfortable. It's not supposed to be. You're not just building a different kind of life, you're becoming a different kind of person. And that requires you to sit with loneliness, uncertainty, and rejection longer than most people can handle. But here's what Jung also knew. The people who can handle that loneliness are the ones who shape the future. Because while everyone else was optimizing for the present, you were building for what comes next. While they were chasing what was popular, you were creating what was necessary. While they were performing, you were becoming real. And in 2026, the world is finally ready for real. Not perfect, not polished, not optimized for virality, just real, depth, substance, work that actually matters. The loneliness you felt for years, that wasn't proof that you were wrong, it was proof that you were early. And now the rest of the world is arriving at the place you've been standing the whole time. Let's talk about metrics for a second, because one of the reasons people who think differently struggle is because their value doesn't show up in the numbers. The algorithm doesn't measure depth, it measures clicks. It doesn't measure meaning, it measures engagement. It doesn't measure transformation, it measures watch time. And for the last decade, people have been optimizing for the metrics. Shorter videos, louder thumbnails, more hooks, more controversy, more volume, because that's what the algorithm rewarded. But here's the problem, the algorithm doesn't care if you're building something real. It just cares if you're keeping people on the platform. And those two things, they're not the same. You probably already know this. You've probably felt it every time you tried to play the game and it didn't work. Every time you posted something you thought was good and it got ignored. Every time you saw someone else go viral with shallow content while your deeper work went unseen. And you probably internalized that as failure, as proof that you weren't good enough, that you didn't understand how things work. But Jung would say you were seeing it wrong, because the fact that your work doesn't fit the algorithm isn't a bug, it's a feature. It means you're building something the algorithm can't measure. Depth, nuance, complexity, transformation, the kind of work that changes someone's life slowly, quietly, over months or years, the kind of work that doesn't go viral but gets remembered, the kind of work that doesn't chase attention but earns respect. That's what you're building, and 2026 is the year that kind of work starts to win. Not because the algorithm changed, but because people are changing. They're tired of shallow, they're tired of loud, they're tired of viral content that disappears in 24 hours. They want something real, something that lasts, something that actually helps them think, feel, and live differently. And you've been building that the whole time. Here's what's happening in 2026 that you need to understand, because this isn't just about you feeling validated, it's about a genuine cultural and economic shift. One, people are de-influencing themselves, they're unfollowing the gurus, they're leaving the platforms, they're turning off notifications. They're realizing that constant content consumption is making them less informed, not more, and they're looking for slower, deeper, more intentional sources of information. That's your lane. Two, the economy is rewarding skill over visibility. For a while, you could build a career on being visible, but now companies are hearing for competence, clients are hearing for results, audiences are following for substance. The people who spent the last 5 years building real skills instead of building followers, they're the ones getting hired, getting paid, getting respected. 3, AI is eating the template. You know, all those cookie-cutter courses, all that recycled advice, all those generic productivity tips, AI can generate that now, instantly, for free. Which means the only thing that has value anymore is original thought, perspective, depth, the stuff AI can't replicate, the stuff only you can create. 4, the community is shifting from broadcast to conversation. People don't want to be talked at anymore. They want to be part of something. They want dialogue. They want depth. They want to feel like they're in a room with someone who actually thinks, not someone who's just performing for the camera. Jung predicted this. He believed that whenever the collective swings too far toward surface-level performance, the culture eventually corrects. It swings back toward depth, toward meaning, toward the people who were building something real the whole time. And that's what's happening right now. The correction is here. And the people who are ready for it, who are already living this way, they're the ones who are going to lead. So what do you actually do with this? How do you take advantage of this moment without becoming what you refused to be for so long? Here's what Jung would tell you. Don't start performing now. The temptation is going to be to finally play the game now that you see it shifting in your favor. Don't. The reason this moment belongs to you is because you didn't perform. Stay real, stay deep, stay focused on the work, not the metrics. Build in public, but build your thing. You don't need to stay invisible. You don't need to hide, but you also don't need to copy what everyone else is doing. Share your process, share your thinking, share your questions, but do it in your voice, not the voice you think the algorithm wants. Find your people, not everyone. You're not trying to go viral. You're trying to build a real community around real work. That means you need to get specific about who you're for, who you're speaking to, who you're serving, and let everyone else keep scrolling. Go deeper instead of wider. Don't try to be on every platform. Don't try to post every day. Don't try to reach everyone. Go deeper into the work itself. Master your craft. Build something so good that people have to pay attention. That's the strategy that lasts. Trust the lag. The results won't come immediately. The audience won't appear overnight. The recognition won't show up on your timeline, but it will come because you're building something real, and real things take time. Jung called this the symbolic life, the life that's oriented toward meaning, not metrics. It doesn't move fast, but it moves forward. Stop apologizing for being different. For years, you've probably downplayed your weirdness, your intensity, your depth. You've tried to make yourself more palatable, more normal, more like everyone else. Stop. The world doesn't need another copy. It needs you, fully, unapologetically, exactly as you are. This is your moment, not because the world suddenly decided you were right, but because the world finally needs what you've been building all along. Here's the last thing I want you to understand, and it's the most important. This isn't just about you succeeding. It's not just about you finally getting the recognition you deserve. It's bigger than that. Jung believed that when enough people individuate, when enough people refuse to follow the template and start thinking for themselves, the entire culture changes. Because individuation isn't a solo act, it's a collective transformation. When you think differently, you give other people permission to think differently. When you build something real, you show other people that real things are possible. When you refuse to perform, you break the spell for everyone watching. And right now, the world needs that, desperately. We're living in a time of massive uncertainty. massive change, massive complexity, and the old models, the templates, the blueprints, the five-step plans, they're not working anymore. We need people who can think critically, who can sit with ambiguity, who can build from first principles instead of copying what worked last year. That's you. You're not just preparing for your own success, you're preparing to lead, to create, to build the structures, the ideas, the communities that the next era needs. And 2026 is the year that becomes visible. Jung said the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and he was right, but there's a second part to that. When you become who you truly are, you make it possible for others to do the same. That's what this moment is about, not individual success, collective transformation. And it starts with people like you, people who refused to follow, who stayed true to themselves, who kept building even when no one was watching. You weren't behind, you were preparing, and now it's time. Let me end with this. 2026 doesn't belong to the loudest. It doesn't belong to the most visible. It doesn't belong to the people with the biggest followings or the most polished brands. It belongs to the people who think for themselves, who build real things, who refuse to perform, who stayed quiet while everyone else was shouting and used that time to go deeper. That's you. Not because you're smarter, not because you're better, but because you refused to follow. And now, the world is finally ready for where you've been going. Jung believed that the people who individuate aren't just outliers, they're guides. They're the ones who show the rest of the culture what's possible, what's real, what's next. And that's what you are, whether you feel ready or not, whether you feel confident or not, you're a guide, because you've been walking the path everyone else is just starting to see. So stop waiting, stop doubting, stop apologizing. This is your year not because you earned it, because you've been preparing for it your whole life. Everyone's chasing the same things, thinking the same way. And you're not. Jung knew 2026 doesn't belong to the loudest. It belongs to the ones who refuse to follow. And that's you. So lead.